the worst thing your ex did?
After I finally got fed up with the toxicity, gaslighting, unnecessary drama, and general bullshit, and I broke up with her, she pulled a traditional no, we're not over because I don't accept it strategy. So I refused to engage and I blocked her everywhere and went NC because she kept messaging me and calling to demand we at least meet to have a final talk in order to get closure, despite the fact that I had already agreed to that and tried it like 3 or 4 times, and it only resulted in her arguing and insulting me and blaming me for everything that happened and for additional shit she made up just to keep things interesting. So, this one time I wasn't home, she sent me an email from a new address that said she had my dog. And if I didn't want something to happen to her, I had to go to her place and have her dumbass closure conversation. In other words, she showed up at my house while I was away on some errands, jumped the fence, broke the lock on the gate that separated my backyard from my front yard, and literally kidnapped my dog and threatened to hurt her if I didn't do as she said. Needless to say, I immediately went to her place to get my dog back, and once I was there, she locked the door and refused to let me out, and kept demanding I stay and explain why I wasted years of her life, and the usual bullshit toxic ex-partners pull, until I told her that if she didn't let me leave with my dog, I was going to call her roommate on my cell phone and ask to be let out, and leave her to explain why me and my dog were locked in their house in the first place. At that point, I guess it finally dawned on her that there was no way to spin this insanity as somehow being my fault, and she finally let me out. The last thing I said to her is to never contact me or come near me or my dog ever again, because I had her email admitting to breaking into my house, stealing my dog, and threatening to hurt her. And at this point, I was willing to get lawyers and the police involved. Now, an ex kidnapping your dog and threatening violence in order to manipulate you into whatever they want you to do is batshit crazy by itself. But the thing that really pissed me off is that we were together for about 8 years, and she was my GF when I adopted my dog back when she was a puppy several years before. So my dog absolutely loved her and saw her as her other owner. I honestly don't know if she was just bluffing or if she would have hurt my dog if I hadn't immediately gone to get her back. But that shit was psychotic anyway. Thankfully, it's been years now, and that dog lived to be a venerable 15 years old before finally passing away in my arms after a full life. And I never saw that crazy ex again.
Damn, did we date the same chick? Left my house in a blind rage and took my cat? Luckily, she brought the cat back later that night. Also locked me in her room and physically wouldn't let me leave, while her kids were in the house. I could have muscled past her, but she would have claimed domestic abuse and I would have gotten in trouble. Also, the final talk bullshit.
She got married to someone else 2 months into our engagement. There is so much to the story, but we literally slept together the night before, and she lied about taking some road trip with friends. It took a friend of mine passing along a Facebook post that shook my world. Please tell me the karma train hit her head on. Never looked back to find that one out.
Masturbating with a photo of a friend of mine, with my cell phone, while I finished having an abortion.
Oh God.
How did you ever find out?
There were times when I fainted during the abortion due to the pain. I regained consciousness and he was not next to me. I needed to go to the bathroom, so I got up as best I could and went. When I opened the door, I found that situation. Awful.
Went away on a trip she had planned before we even started dating. A safari with 5 strangers, 4 other women and 1 guy, set up by a tourism company catering toward 20 to 30-somethings, the world within us, and let the one guy on the trip within her, despite being the only one that wasn't single, and then texting me the morning of her birthday, while she was still 8,000 miles away, that we should go out separate ways with no further explanation and stonewalling me when I asked to talk about what was going on, even after I'd spent $500 on her to celebrate her birthday with her before she left on the trip. Stephanie, if you're reading this, fuck you. I'll never forget the day my ex wiped out our entire joint savings account. We had been together for 5 years and were planning to buy a house. I had been diligently saving up for the down payment, and our account had grown to a substantial amount. Jesus, this is some nightmare shit. Did you ever get it back? Yes, of course I had filled the case but didn't recover the whole amount. There's this scene from The Office where Michael finds out John cheated on him, and he says, "You cheated on me?" After I specifically asked you not to? That became a silly joke between us. Turns out it became more reality. Our son was born in October, and by December she was already in other guys' phones. Took me 6 months to find out when I noticed random bruise on her ass. Turns out she was hooking up with her new boss at the time. Then she ended things and started seeing someone else, ultimately taking the life I wanted with her, me, and my son, and giving it to someone else. This was 5 years ago. Can't say I've fully recovered as I'm still hesitant to date or see anyone. On 4 different occasions, faked medical emergencies requiring an ambulance to take her away to the hospital. On one occasion, she happened to know what movie a friend and I were in, faked an emergency in the theater lobby, and had the police come pull me out of a movie in the middle of it showing. Lights on. Announcement for me to come down to the police. What a mess. No assault whatsoever then? I was in high school. I didn't know better and thought it was all real. Watching her change, despite me changing to her whims. She was a church girl, always doing the right thing. I was a skater bum that listened to depressing music and smoked pot, etc. So I changed for her to be better, have a job, listen to gospel music, leave my hobbies, etc. Then I found out she was hanging out a lot with her old high school friend. And then she started changing. She started listening to rock and rap music, started smoking pot, started skating, would sneak out of the house, etc. Obviously, she liked the change and the excitement of someone new, so she stopped texting, stopped calling me, stopped hanging out with me, etc. Essentially cutting me off, but keeping me around. All while I stuck around like an idiot watching it happen, begging her to just give me another chance. I had my faults, but I never once laid a hand on her, or cheated on her, or pulled her away from her family.
Cheated on me 2 days I did an abortion he pushed me to do, then just disappear. He also spent $400 in prostitutes in the same month. And wrote me months later to tell me is not my fault. I didn't put the abortion pills in your throat. That was your responsibility.
Punched me 3 times. I chased her to the room to make sure she didn't get my gun. She thought I was going to shoot her. I told her I could just throw her small self out the window. I taught her to shoot so she knows guns. I'm 6 feet 3 inches, 200 plus, and she was 5 feet 1 inch, 110. I took the hits and moved out. Good for you. It wasn't going to get any better. I was already looking for my own place.
I guess I consider myself fortunate because I think comparative to what other people's experiences have been, this is tame. So sad that I'm going to get a weird ex in the future that's going to then compare with everybody else's experience. I remember in high school, I would dread going home mostly because of my familial situation. But what didn't help was the fact that he would call and text me all the time and would threaten to hurt himself if I didn't respond. If I tried to end the relationship, he would threaten the same thing. He would pressure me a lot into having intimate phone conversations with him. For example, I'd get on a call thinking we were going to have a normal talk, and he'd immediately show me an inappropriate picture right as we started the conversation. He would often steer the conversation into intimate topics. I didn't always feel comfortable with that, but if I said no, he was going to threaten to harm himself. A lot of my friends have told me that I was being mean to him and that I should have been more accepting of this. Please remember that this was a high school relationship. I don't think we would have been compatible even if I was more accepting. We simply didn't share many interests, apart from liking to text each other. So if possible, let's frame this not in terms of who is the meaner person, but rather as an issue of compatibility. I didn't like what he liked, so we weren't compatible. Antagonized me to the point of violence, almost. Let me explain. Let me preface this by saying I'm not a violent person. I'm super chill by nature, always have been since I was a kid. 6 years ago, I was in a terrible relationship. I had an opiate addiction. My girlfriend was supplying me, and we would both be horrible to each other. One night, we got in a fight, shouting back and forth. She slapped me across the face, hard. I grabbed her by the throat and threw her against the wall and told her that if she ever raised her hand to me again, I would raise one back. In that moment, I was seeing red, angry. But as soon as I let go of her, I wanted to cry. I felt embarrassed and ashamed of what I had done and said. I knew that it wasn't who I really was, but while fucked up on drugs and in a fight, I had the potential to actually harm someone that I claimed to love. This was the breaking point for me. I kicked all the drugs. I broke up with her. She moved out, and I started rebuilding my life. It took a while before I was comfortable enough with myself to date again. I don't tell everyone that I've dated since about that night because I don't believe that's who I really am. I've never had an episode like that since. Everyone has the potential to be violent in the right situations. Since I know what situation did it to me, I've made sure to never be in that situation again. Haven't touched anything harder than alcohol since, and even that has been just a social drink here and there. By the way, it's not her fault that I reacted like I did. It's her fault that she slapped me. But everything after that is on me. Honestly, I think I fault her more for keeping me high all the time.
Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful day or night and see you soon. You can also watch Scary Reddit Stories #1.